The lawyer slid the final document across the polished mahogany table. "Mr. Rowan Ashford," he said quietly, "if you refuse to accept the inheritance, your signature is all that's required." The room erupted. "What nonsense!" My uncle slammed both hands onto the table, veins bulging across his neck. "Do you even understand what you're throwing away?" Across from me, my younger cousin Victor leaned back with a smile that was almost impossible to hide. Grandmother Eleanor didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. Around us, directors of the Ashford Group exchanged uneasy glances. One signature. That was all it would take. Every share, every voting right, every responsibility. Gone. The empire that had ruined one lifetime would belong to someone else. I picked up the pen. My fingers didn't tremble. Not this time. Because I'd already watched everyone in this room cry over these papers once before. Only none of them remembered it. I refuse the inheritance. The words landed like thunder. "You've lost your mind," Uncle Marcus shouted. Victor immediately stood. "Grandmother, he's obviously unstable. We shouldn't let him embarrass the family." Embarrass. The same word. The same tone. Exactly as before. I almost smiled. No one noticed. Because no one knew what I already knew. 3 days ago, I had died. Not in some dramatic car crash. Not from an assassin. Not because of an illness. I died alone in my office on the 62nd floor of Ashford Tower while trying to save the company everyone else had abandoned. The stress finally destroyed my heart. When the pain reached my chest, I had called the only people I still believed were family. Victor. No answer. Uncle Marcus. Phone switched off. Grandmother. Her assistant answered instead. Chairwoman is unavailable. Unavailable. Even while I was dying. Hours later, the cleaners found my body beside mountains of unfinished reports. The newspapers praised my dedication. The board mourned publicly. Victor inherited everything. Within 18 months, he bankrupted the company. Thousands lost their jobs. Grandfather's life's work disappeared forever. And somehow, I woke up again. Not years earlier. Only 3 days. Exactly 3 days before signing the inheritance transfer. A second chance. A tiny one. But enough. Enough to stop making the same mistake. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Ashford, are you certain?" "Completely. You don't even want to hear the conditions?" Grandmother asked. I finally looked at her. She had always been elegant. Cold. Perfectly controlled. People feared her because she never cried. Never laughed loudly. Never admitted mistakes. In my previous life, I had spent 15 years trying to earn her approval. Working 16-hour days. Giving up friendships. Giving up love. Giving up myself. For one sentence. "I'm proud of you." She never said it. Instead, she always praised Victor. The younger generation should learn from him. Even though Victor couldn't finish a project without stealing someone else's work. "I'm certain," I repeated. Silence filled the room. Victor slowly frowned. Something wasn't matching his expectations. In my previous life, I had fought desperately for this inheritance. He had spent years undermining me. Anonymous leaks. False accusations. Boardroom manipulation. He expected resistance. Not surrender. "You can still reconsider," he said gently. His concern sounded practiced. "Brother, grandfather trusted you." Brother. Another familiar lie. We weren't brothers. We were rivals raised under the same roof. "I appreciate your concern. And I'm still refusing." His smile cracked. Only for a second. Then it returned. Too quickly. Interesting. He wanted this. More than he should. The lawyer pushed another folder toward me. "If you sign here." I didn't hesitate. Ink touched paper. Rowan Ashford. Done. A strange calm spread through my chest. It felt free. The burden that had crushed me for an entire lifetime no longer belonged to me. Someone else could carry it. Someone who had wanted it desperately. Victor. He reached for the inheritance documents almost immediately. Too eagerly. The directors exchanged another glance. One of them, Mr. Holden, watched Victor with narrowed eyes. He remembered something. Not enough, but something. That tiny reaction settled another suspicion growing inside me. Perhaps the disaster I remembered hadn't started where everyone believed. Perhaps it had started much earlier. Grandmother stood. So be it. No disappointment. No attempt to stop me. Nothing. That hurt more than anger would have. Even now, she had already chosen. Victor approached after the meeting. "You don't look upset." "I feel lighter." He chuckled. "You'll regret this." I met his eyes. No. For the first time in years. I meant it. His smile disappeared completely. Outside Ashford Tower, rain had begun falling. Cold. Steady. The city looked exactly like it had on the day I died. People hurried across crowded streets. Cars honked endlessly. Life continued without caring who won or lost. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Ashford? Yes. This is Daniel Reeves from Horizon Capital. My heartbeat slowed. Daniel. He had called me before. 3 days after the inheritance. In my previous life, offering a partnership. I rejected him because family came first. Months later, Horizon bought the remains of Ashford Group after Victor destroyed it. What can I do for you? We've been following your work for years. Years. Not weeks. Years. We'd like to invite you for dinner. This hadn't happened before. Not yet. Something had changed. Perhaps. Changing one decision had already changed the future. I'll think about it. We'll wait for your answer. The call ended. Rain soaked my shoulders. Behind me, Victor stood near the entrance. Watching. Smiling. Like a man who believed he'd already won. I had once believed the same thing. Until I learned that some victories were simply the beginning of a much larger collapse. The Ashford estate looked unchanged. White stone walls. Perfect gardens. A mansion so grand that visitors often forgot how cold it felt inside. I hadn't planned on returning. But some things couldn't be avoided forever. The family dinner was one of them. Every first Friday after the inheritance announcement, everyone gathered around grandfather's enormous oak dining table. In my previous life, I had arrived early, prepared reports, answered questions, accepted criticism. Tonight, I walked in exactly on time. Nothing more, nothing less. Conversation stopped. Victor occupied grandfather's old seat. No one objected. That alone told me everything. Uncle Marcus raised his glass. A toast. To Victor. May he lead the Ashford family into an even greater future. Crystal glasses clinked together. Mine remained untouched. Grandmother noticed immediately. You aren't drinking. I'm driving. You never cared about that before. No. I met her eyes calmly. I care now. A faint crease appeared between her brows. She wasn't used to short answers. She preferred explanations. Excuses. Apologies. I offered none. Dinner began. Halfway through the meal, Victor unfolded a thick folder. I've prepared a restructuring proposal. Of course he had. He always loved presentations, especially when someone else prepared them. He began speaking confidently. New investments. Foreign expansion. Asset transfers. Every sentence matched my memories. Exactly. Except now, I wasn't responsible for stopping him. Mr. Holden, one of the senior directors invited to dinner, interrupted politely. Some of these projections seem optimistic. Victor smiled. Innovation always frightens traditional thinkers. The table laughed. I stayed silent. Because I remembered the ending. Those optimistic investments would become billions in losses. The foreign partner would disappear. The asset transfers would trigger government investigations. Every disaster was already waiting. No one believed it yet. No one except me. Dessert arrived. Grandmother finally spoke. Rowan. Yes. You've been unusually quiet. I have nothing to add. You always have opinions. I used to. The words lingered. Even the servants sensed something had changed. Victor leaned forward. If you disagree with my plan, you should say so. Everyone looked at me, waiting. In another life, I would have argued until midnight. I would have produced documents, evidence, risk assessments. I would have saved them, again and again, until I collapsed under responsibilities that were never truly mine. Instead, I smiled. I hope it succeeds. Victor blinked. That's all. That's all. For a fraction of a second, fear flashed across his face. He wanted opposition. He knew how to defeat opposition. He didn't know how to defeat indifference. After dinner, I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the gardens. Cool wind brushed against my face. Footsteps approached. Mr. Holden stopped beside me. I've known you since you were 23. I know. You aren't acting like the same man. I've changed. He studied me for a long moment. Do you know something? I looked toward the brightly lit dining room where Victor laughed confidently with the rest of the family. I know when a man believes winning means he no longer has to be careful. Mr. Holden remained silent. Then he nodded slowly. Interesting answer. He walked away. He hadn't understood. Not completely, but he had started asking questions. That was enough. Inside the mansion, Victor celebrated his new authority. Outside, Rain began falling again. I watched droplets gather on the marble railing. Everyone eventually slipped over the edge. Not because someone pushed it, because gravity never forgot. Neither did consequences. My phone vibrated once more. A message from Daniel Reeves. Dinner tomorrow. One conversation may change both our futures. I stared at the screen. In my previous life, I had ignored opportunity for obligation. This time, I slowly typed one word. Agreed. Then I slipped the phone into my pocket. Behind me, the laughter inside the mansion grew louder. They thought the inheritance was the prize. I already knew. It was the trap. The restaurant overlooked the river. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the gray morning sky, while the city slowly came alive below. Executives filled the dining room with quiet conversations, polished shoes, and carefully measured smiles. Daniel Reeves was already waiting. Unlike most investors, he didn't stand when I approached. He simply studied me. I expected you to refuse. So did I. That answer earned the first genuine smile I'd seen all week. Please. He gestured toward the empty chair. Coffee arrived before either of us touched the menu. Daniel folded his hands. I've wanted to meet you for nearly 2 years. I didn't react. In my previous life, those words had come much later. Now they arrived before everything else. You've been watching me? We've been watching your work. He corrected me deliberately. Not your family's reputation. Yours. Interesting. In every report sent to us regarding Ashford Group, one thing stood out. He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were copies of internal analyses. Many carried my name. Recommendations. Risk assessments. Emergency plans. Documents Victor had dismissed. You obtained confidential material. They weren't confidential. Daniel shook his head. They were ignored. I almost laughed. That sounded painfully accurate. You refused the inheritance. I did. Why? A simple question. One I couldn't answer honestly. Because I had already watched the future collapse. Because I had already died carrying responsibilities that were never appreciated. Instead, I said, I finally realized responsibility without authority is just another form of exploitation. Daniel remained silent. Then he nodded once. I was hoping you'd say something like that. You were. Horizon Capital isn't looking for another heir. He leaned forward. We're looking for someone who can build. Not inherit. Build. The difference mattered. Meanwhile, Ashford Group held its first board meeting under Victor's leadership. I wasn't there. For the first time in 15 years. I wasn't saving them. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Mr. Holden. Missed call. Another. Then another. Finally, a message. Victor approved the overseas acquisition. No due diligence. Call me. I locked the screen. Not because I didn't care. Because I remembered. This was exactly where I had once stepped in. I had delayed the acquisition by 6 months. Negotiated safer terms. Reduced the damage. Everyone praised Victor. They merely expected competence from me. Not this time. I placed my phone face down. Daniel noticed. Business. Someone else's. He smiled faintly. I think I understand. 3 hours later, I walked out with a preliminary consulting agreement. Nothing flashy. No massive salary. No dramatic announcement. Only opportunity. Something earned. Not inherited. The air felt strangely lighter. Until another familiar voice stopped me. Rowan. I turned. Claire. She stood beside a black sedan, wearing a navy coat and an expression somewhere between guilt and uncertainty. Years ago, we had almost become engaged. Until my family's endless crises consumed every promise I'd ever made. She had eventually walked away. Not because she stopped loving me. Because she believed I'd never choose myself. I heard about the inheritance. News traveled quickly. I imagine everyone has. You really gave it up? I did. She searched my face. I don't understand. I know. Silence settled between us. She finally asked the question no one else had. Are you happy? Happy. The word felt unfamiliar. I think. I looked toward the river. I'm becoming someone who might be. Her eyes softened. I've never heard you answer like that before. Before either of us could continue, my phone rang again. Mr. Holden. This time I answered. Mr. Holden. His voice sounded strained. Victor dismissed 3 senior compliance officers. I see. You, that's all. What would you like me to say? They warned him. I know. He accused them of resisting innovation. I know. Holden fell silent. Then, carefully. How? I closed my eyes briefly. Because I'd lived it. Because those same 3 people had resigned in my previous life. because replacing them with loyal followers had opened the door to every disaster that followed. I've seen this kind of leadership before. Technically true. Holden lowered his voice. Can we meet? Not today. You aren't coming back? No. The answer surprised even me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was acceptance. The company no longer belonged to me. Trying to control it would only chain me to the same fate. I understand. But he clearly didn't. The call ended. Claire looked thoughtful. You've changed. I had to. No. She smiled sadly. You finally stopped carrying everyone else. That evening, grandmother requested my presence. Not invited. Requested. The distinction mattered. Her study smelled of old books and expensive tea. She remained standing beside grandfather's portrait. I've received troubling reports. I waited. You met Horizon Capital. Word spread quickly inside powerful families. I did. You should have informed the family. I don't work for the family. You are an Ashford. I was born one. Her expression hardened. There is no difference. There is now. For the first time in years. I didn't lower my eyes. She noticed. I don't recognize you. I didn't recognize myself either. Her fingers tightened around the teacup. You think refusing responsibility makes you free? No. I think choosing my responsibility does. The room fell silent. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. Grandmother spoke again. Victor says you're waiting for him to fail. I almost smiled. I'm not waiting. What does that mean? It means success and failure belong to the people making the decisions. She stared at me, searching for sarcasm, finding none. You truly won't interfere? No. She looked away first. I hope you won't regret that. I quietly replied. I already know what regret feels like. 2 weeks passed. For the first time since joining Ashford Group, my mornings belonged to me. I worked with Horizon Capital as an independent strategy consultant. Smaller projects. Sharper decisions. No endless family politics. No pretending someone else's mistakes were mine to fix. The difference was astonishing. Then the first crack appeared. Financial news exploded across every major business website. Ashford Group delays overseas project after regulatory questions. Just a delay. Nothing catastrophic. Yet, I closed the article without commenting. Minutes later, Victor called. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Congratulations, he said. His cheerful tone sounded forced. I heard Horizon hired you. They did. Temporary work. For now. He laughed. You'll come back eventually. No. You always come back. Not this lifetime. You don't sound worried. I'm not. His laughter disappeared. You're enjoying this. I haven't mentioned Ashford once. You don't have to. His breathing slowed. You knew? There it was. The first real suspicion. What did I know? The regulators. I read the news. No. His voice sharpened. You expected it. I expected every business to face scrutiny. Technically true. He wanted certainty. I offered none. You could still help. The words hung between us. In my previous life, those 4 words had controlled me. Family needs you. The company needs you. Grandfather would have wanted. Not anymore. I hope you solve it. You aren't refusing me. I'm refusing responsibility for decisions I didn't make. He said nothing. Then quietly, you've become cold. No. I looked out the office window at the crowded streets below. I've become honest. The call ended. That evening, Mr. Holden arrived unexpectedly at Horizon's office. His usually immaculate suit looked wrinkled. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. He closed my office door. I shouldn't be here. Then why are you? He placed several documents on my desk. Internal approvals. Asset transfers. Loan guarantees. Each signature belonged to Victor. Each warning had been ignored. Exactly as before. I wanted you to see this. I don't need to. You didn't even read them. I know what's inside. Holden stared at me. How? I met his gaze calmly. Does the answer change anything? No. Then focus on what matters. He exhaled slowly. We're running out of cash. Sooner than before. Interesting. Changing my decision had accelerated everything. Mr. Holden. Yes. You've always cared about the employees. I have. Then protect them. He frowned. The company. The people. I interrupted gently. Not the name. He looked down at the documents. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally he nodded. I understand. This time, I believed him. After he left, I remained alone in the office. The city lights reflected across the glass walls. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I answered. A woman's trembling voice came through. Mr. Ashford. Yes. My name is Emily Carter. The name struck me like distant thunder. In my previous life, Emily had been one of Ashford Group's internal auditors. She had discovered evidence that could have exposed everything. Before she could present it, she resigned. 3 months later, she disappeared from public life. I found something. My heartbeat slowed. What kind of something? I think someone inside Ashford Group has been moving money for years. I closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised. Because the truth had arrived much earlier than before. And this time, I wasn't the only one who could see it. Emily chose a small tea house hidden behind an old bookstore. There were no cameras, no reporters, no executives pretending to enjoy expensive coffee while listening to other people's conversations. Just quiet. She arrived 15 minutes late. Not because she lacked punctuality, because she checked the street 3 separate times before entering. The woman sitting across from me looked nothing like the confident auditor I remembered. Dark circles framed her eyes. Her shoulders remained tense. She carried a canvas bag instead of a briefcase. When she finally sat down, she didn't order anything. She simply slid a thick envelope toward me. I almost burned these. I rested my hand on the envelope without opening it. Why didn't you? Because if I disappear, she swallowed. Someone should know. Those words carried far more weight than they should have. In my previous life, she had disappeared before anyone heard her side of the story. This time, she was still here. I won't ask where you got them. You already know? I know enough. She stared at me. You keep saying things like that. I've learned to recognize patterns. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. She finally exhaled. 3 years ago, someone started creating shell companies. I listened. Small amounts at first. Consulting fees. Equipment purchases. Foreign partnerships. Nothing large enough to trigger immediate concern. She opened the envelope. Every page contained transaction records. Different companies. Different signatures. Different accounts. Yet every payment eventually led to the same destination. A private investment firm. One I recognized instantly. Silver Crest Holdings. My chest tightened. Not because I hadn't seen the name before. Because I remembered exactly what happened after it appeared. Silver Crest would collapse. Its owner would disappear overseas. Every investor would lose everything, including Ashford Group. Emily pointed toward one page. This signature belongs to Victor. I nodded. I know. She frowned. You aren't surprised. I expected something similar. She leaned back. Mr. Ashford. Her voice became quieter. Were you investigating this before you left? No. Then how can you stay so calm? Because panic had already killed me once. Because I had spent a lifetime believing urgency alone could save people determined to ignore the truth. Instead, I said, fear doesn't improve judgment. She remained silent for several moments. Then she gave a tired smile. I wish I'd met this version of you years ago. As they finished speaking, my phone vibrated. Mr. Holden. Again. I answered. They're calling an emergency board meeting. I expected that. They want you there. I declined. They specifically requested you. Why? His voice lowered. Victor says the regulators respect you. I almost laughed. Respect. In my previous life, they respected the work. Not me. And once the work was done, they praised Victor for fixing problems I had prevented. I'm not coming. They'll blame you. They already do. Silence. Then Holden sighed. I suppose they always have. That afternoon, every major financial channel covered the emergency meeting. Reporters crowded outside Ashford Tower. Shareholders shouted questions. Stock prices slid another 8% before lunch. I watched everything from Horizon's conference room. Daniel entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. You aren't there. No. You should be. I was. He looked confused. For 15 years. Daniel handed me a cup. You know something interesting? What? When people spend years relying on one person. He glanced toward the television. They mistake dependence for leadership. I smiled faintly. They're learning the difference. On screen, Victor walked confidently toward the microphones. We remain financially stable. A lie. The regulatory review is routine. Another lie. Our strategic investments continue exactly as planned. The biggest lie. Daniel muted the television. Do you think he'll survive this? I looked through the glass wall toward the skyline. He won't lose because he made mistakes. Daniel waited. He'll lose because he refuses to admit them. Late that evening, I returned to my apartment. Someone was waiting outside. Grandmother. She had never visited before. Not once. Her chauffeur stood several steps away, pretending not to hear. She looked older than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. May we talk? I unlocked the door. She entered without speaking. My apartment surprised her. Simple furniture. Books. A modest dining table. No expensive artwork. No family portraits. You live like this? I live comfortably. You could have had everything. I have enough. She slowly turned toward me. The board wants you back. I know. They believe Victor needs guidance. They're probably right. Then return. I poured tea for both of us. No. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Your grandfather built that company. I know. You would abandon his legacy? I met her eyes. No. I refused to confuse his legacy with other people's choices. She looked away. For several seconds, only the sound of rain filled the room. Then she asked quietly, do you resent us? I thought carefully before answering. No. The answer surprised even me. I resent the man who believed earning love required endless sacrifice. She closed her eyes. For the first time, I saw regret. Real regret. The next morning, headlines spread faster than anyone expected. Whistleblower claims irregularities inside Ashford Group. Emily hadn't released the evidence. Someone else had. Television stations replayed the story every 15 minutes. Financial analysts debated possible fraud. Investors panicked. Ashford shares plunged before the market fully opened. Daniel placed a tablet in front of me. That wasn't you. No. I didn't think it was. He watched my expression carefully. You expected this. I expected the truth to arrive. He nodded slowly. There's a difference. Across the city, Ashford Tower became a fortress. Security guarded every entrance. Employees whispered in hallways. Some quietly packed their desks. Others still believed Victor would somehow restore order. Hope often survived longer than reason. Mr. Holden called shortly after noon. They've suspended 3 finance managers. To calm investors? Yes. Were they responsible? No. I closed my eyes. The pattern hadn't changed. Find smaller people. Offer bigger excuses. Protect the powerful. They're sacrificing the wrong employees. I know. His voice broke slightly. I argued. And I lost. I remained silent. Some battles could only be understood after defeat. That afternoon, Emily arrived unexpectedly at Horizon. She looked frightened. They know. Who? Whoever moved the money. She handed me another flash drive. I copied everything. You should go to the authorities. I will. But if something happens. She hesitated. Promise me you won't let them bury this. I looked at the drive. Then back at her. I promise the truth won't disappear. Not because I would chase revenge. Because truth no longer needed me alone to survive. She nodded, visibly relieved. As she left, Daniel stepped into my office. You've gained an unexpected ally. She gained the courage herself. Most people don't. They do. I looked toward the elevator doors. They just need to believe someone will listen. Daniel smiled. I was right about you. About what? You don't build companies. He paused. You build trust. That evening, another call came. Victor. This time his voice lacked every trace of confidence. Rowan. Yes. They're investigating me. I heard. I didn't do this. I know. He fell silent. That single sentence stunned him. You believe me? I believe you're responsible for terrible decisions. I paused. But I don't believe you planned everything. His breathing became uneven. There are things. He stopped himself. What things? I can't say over the phone. The confident air was gone. In his place stood a frightened man realizing he might have been someone else's pawn all along. I need to see you. I looked out at the rain-soaked city. Once, I would have rushed to save him. This time, I simply answered, we'll talk tomorrow. Because for the first time since waking up again, the truth wasn't just approaching. It was beginning to choose its own path. Victor arrived 30 minutes early. That alone told me how desperate he had become. The private meeting room at Horizon Capital overlooked the city, but Victor never looked out the windows. He paced from one end of the room to the other, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. When I entered, he stopped. You came. I said I would. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked thinner than he had only weeks ago. Power had aged him faster than time. I need you to believe me. I told you already. I know. His voice cracked. That's why I'm confused. He laughed bitterly. If our positions were reversed, I wouldn't have believed me. No, I suppose you wouldn't. He sank into a chair. I signed everything. I know. I approved every acquisition. I know. I ignored every warning. I know. He looked up sharply. Then why aren't you blaming me? Because blame wouldn't change the past. Because I'd already wasted one lifetime hating people who were only part of the problem. Tell me everything. Victor rubbed both hands over his face. It started 2 years ago. His voice was barely above a whisper. Uncle Marcus introduced me to Silver Crest Holdings. I remained expressionless. They promised overseas connections, government contacts, guaranteed returns. They made every opportunity sound too good to refuse. Were you suspicious? I should have been. He swallowed hard. But they always had answers. Every answer had been carefully prepared. Every trap had been patiently built. Victor continued. They kept telling me I deserved more authority. They said grandmother trusted you too much. They said you wanted to replace me. I didn't interrupt. They made me believe everything was a competition. He lowered his head. And I believed them. For the first time in either lifetime. Victor wasn't defending himself. He was admitting who he had become. I wanted to win. He laughed once. A hollow sound. I didn't even know what winning meant. Silence filled the room. Finally he asked, You already knew, didn't you? I met his exhausted eyes. I knew ambition without integrity always ends the same way. He searched my face for several seconds, then slowly nodded. I don't think I'll ever understand you. You don't have to. That afternoon, the Financial Crimes Bureau executed search warrants at Ashford Group. Television helicopters circled above Ashford Tower. Employees watched investigators carry away boxes of documents. Reporters shouted questions from behind police barriers. The story dominated every news channel. Inside Horizon's conference room, Daniel muted another broadcast. The market has suspended trading. I watched investigators disappear through the revolving doors. How many employees? Nearly 6,000. I closed my eyes briefly. They don't deserve this. No, Daniel agreed quietly. They never did. That was why I'd asked Mr. Holden to protect people instead of the company. Names could fail. Buildings could be sold. Businesses could disappear. Lives still mattered. My phone rang. Mr. Holden. His voice sounded exhausted. They've arrested Marcus. I remained silent. He tried leaving the country. Another piece of the future had changed. In my previous life, Marcus escaped before anyone connected him to Silver Crest. Now, he'd been stopped. What evidence? Wire transfers. False contracts. Personal accounts. Holden inhaled deeply. It wasn't Victor. I know. It was Marcus. I know. How? I looked toward the rain sliding down the conference room windows. Sometimes. I answered quietly. People reveal themselves the moment no one protects them anymore. Holden understood. Without me constantly repairing every crisis. Marcus had become careless. His own greed had exposed him. Consequences. Nothing more. Nothing less. That evening, grandmother requested another meeting. This time she came alone. No chauffeur. No assistant. She entered my apartment carrying a weathered leather folder. I found this. She placed it on the table. Grandfather's handwriting covered every page. Business notes. Personal observations. Plans for the future. One page bore my name. My hands froze. I slowly opened it. Rowan works harder than anyone. My greatest mistake is allowing him to believe hard work must earn affection. My vision blurred. Another line followed. When the time comes, I hope Eleanor protects him from carrying burdens that should belong to all of us. I looked up. Grandmother couldn't meet my eyes. I never showed you. No. I thought making you stronger meant asking more from you. Her voice trembled. I confused love with expectations. For the first time in my life. She cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent tears she could no longer stop. 3 days later, the government's investigation reached its conclusion. Every major network interrupted normal programming. The press conference was broadcast live. Daniel, Emily, Mr. Holden, and I watched together from Horizon's executive lounge. The lead prosecutor stepped before dozens of microphones. After reviewing financial records, he paused. We have concluded that Ashford Group became the victim of a coordinated fraud directed through Silver Crest Holdings. Reporters erupted with questions. The principal architect was Marcus Ashford. Photographs appeared on every screen. Marcus being escorted into court. Marcus signing hidden contracts. Marcus meeting secretly with Silver Crest executives. Years of deception, years of manipulation, years of greed. Emily quietly covered her mouth. It's finally over. No, I answered gently. The investigation is. Healing takes longer. She nodded. I think you're right. Victor surrendered his position as acting chairman that afternoon. No dramatic speech. No excuses. Only a short public statement. I failed the employees who trusted this company. I accept responsibility for every decision I made. When reporters asked whether he blamed anyone else, he simply answered, no. For the first time, he stopped running from himself. Later that evening, I received a handwritten letter. Not an email. Not a legal notice. A letter. It was from Victor. Rowan, I spent years believing you were my rival. Marcus made sure of that. The truth is much harder to accept. You were the only person trying to protect all of us. I mistook your sacrifice for competition. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope one day I become someone worthy of asking for it. Victor, I folded the letter carefully. Not because everything had been repaired. Because honesty deserved respect. Even when it arrived painfully late. A week later, the remaining shareholders gathered. The board offered me the chairmanship unanimously. Mr. Holden delivered the proposal personally. Everyone agrees. I know. They believe only you can rebuild Ashford. I looked through the boardroom windows toward the familiar skyline. In another life, those words would have felt like destiny. Now they felt like chains. I decline. Holden wasn't surprised. I thought you might. I've already made my choice. The company? The people inside it deserve competent leadership. He smiled faintly. But not necessarily me. Exactly. He extended his hand. I understand. As he left, I looked once more toward Ashford Tower. The building still stood. The family name still existed. But neither defined my future anymore. The inheritance everyone had fought over had become a lesson instead of a prize. And the knowledge I had carried alone since waking up again had finally become the truth everyone else could see. Autumn arrived quietly. The headlines disappeared first. Then the television debates. Then the endless speculation that had consumed every business page for months. The city had already found a new scandal. Life moved on. For the first time in years. So did I. Horizon Capital expanded faster than anyone expected. Not through risky acquisitions. Not through impossible promises. Only careful decisions. Disciplined growth. Daniel insisted on one rule for every new project. If Rowan says we don't understand the risk, he would smile toward the room. Then we don't. At first, the younger executives laughed. 3 months later, no one laughed anymore. Every company that ignored warning signs eventually collapsed. Every project we rejected eventually revealed hidden problems. People began calling me fortunate. I never corrected them. Luck was much easier to explain than another lifetime. One afternoon, Daniel entered my office carrying 2 folders. The first is ordinary. The second isn't. I accepted the thinner one first. A proposal from a manufacturing company seeking emergency financing. Healthy numbers. Honest management. Employees worth protecting. I signed immediately. The second. Daniel handed it over carefully. The logo made me pause. Ashford Foundation. Not Ashford Group. The charitable foundation grandfather had established decades earlier. They want you to become chairman. I refused the company. This isn't the company. He sat opposite me. The foundation was separated during the investigation. It supports scholarships, medical research, employee education. He leaned forward. Your grandfather personally designed it. I opened the file. Most of the programs had been frozen after the scandal. Funding had nearly disappeared. Children had lost scholarships. Hospitals had lost grants. None of those people had caused the disaster. Yet they were paying for it. Daniel quietly asked, "What do you think?" I remained silent for several moments. The old Rowan would have accepted instantly. The man I had become knew better. Only if. Daniel waited. The board agrees to complete transparency. No family control. No political appointments. No honorary positions. Only results. Daniel smiled. I already suspected that would be your answer. The first board meeting lasted 6 hours. Half the directors resigned before lunch. The remaining half stayed. Not because they liked my conditions, because they finally understood why they were necessary. We publish every donation. I wrote across the whiteboard. Every expense. Every contract. If we make mistakes. I looked around the room. We admit them. One elderly director raised his hand. That sounds difficult. It is. It also happens to be honest. Nobody argued. As the meeting ended, Emily waited outside. She no longer looked afraid. Instead of carrying evidence in secret, she carried project reports. She had accepted Horizon's offer to build an internal ethics department. You've been busy. She laughed. I sleep better now. I'm glad. She hesitated. Can I ask something? Of course. Were you ever tempted? To do what? Expose everything yourself. I thought carefully. I wanted justice. She nodded. But I no longer wanted control. She smiled. I think that's why people trust you. Perhaps. Or perhaps people simply recognized someone who had finally stopped pretending he could save everyone alone. That evening, I visited grandfather's grave. Fresh flowers rested beside the stone. Someone else had already come. I recognized the handwriting on the small card. Victor. No message. Only 3 words. I'm still trying. I placed another bouquet beside his. The wind carried fallen leaves across the quiet cemetery. I understand now. My voice barely rose above a whisper. I kept protecting your company. I looked toward the engraved name, when I should have been protecting your values. The answer, of course, was silence. Yet somehow, it felt enough. Winter arrived with the first snowfall. The Ashford Foundation reopened every scholarship program that had been suspended. Students who believed their education had ended received unexpected phone calls. Researchers returned to laboratories that had nearly closed. Factories partnered with local technical schools to train young workers instead of replacing them. For the first time, the Ashford name created hope instead of headlines. One morning, Mr. Holden visited my office. He looked healthier. Retirement suited him. You've changed this place. He looked around Horizon's headquarters. Open workspaces. Young analysts debating ideas. No portraits of founders. No oversized executive offices. No. I smiled. We simply removed unnecessary walls. He laughed. I wasn't talking about architecture. He handed me a small wooden box. I found this while clearing my office. Inside rested grandfather's old fountain pen, the same pen he had used to sign Ashford Group's first international contract. I thought the family should keep it. Holden shook his head. No. He looked directly at me. Families inherit names. Character is earned. For several moments, neither of us spoke. I closed the box gently. Thank you. A month later, Horizon hosted its annual leadership conference. Instead of famous celebrities, we invited small business owners, teachers, factory supervisors, people who quietly improved other people's lives. Some investors questioned the decision. Attendance exceeded expectations anyway. After my keynote speech, a young entrepreneur approached me. I've read everything about Ashford. I smiled politely. Then you've probably read too much. He laughed nervously. Can I ask one question? Go ahead. If you could go back. The question stopped him. Would you still refuse the inheritance? The room seemed strangely quiet. Only I understood the irony hidden inside those words. Would I? I looked toward the audience. Toward Daniel, Emily, Mr. Holden. People who stood beside me because of trust rather than obligation. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. I would. Why? Because losing something everyone wanted. I paused, allowed me to discover everything that actually mattered. The young man slowly nodded. I think I understand. You will. I smiled. Eventually. That evening, as the conference ended, Daniel joined me on the rooftop terrace. The city glittered beneath us. You've become difficult to surprise. Have I? He handed me an envelope. This might help. Inside was a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Ashford Foundation named Most Trusted Charitable Organization of the Year. I laughed quietly. I wasn't expecting this. I know. Daniel looked toward the skyline. You spent one lifetime trying to protect an inheritance. He turned toward me. This lifetime. He smiled. You built something nobody can steal. Snow began falling gently across the city, not as a symbol of endings, but of quiet beginnings that arrived without asking anyone's permission. The cold no longer reminded me of loneliness. It reminded me how seasons always changed, no matter how long winter seemed to last. Spring returned with warm rain. Exactly 1 year had passed since I had signed away the inheritance. The date appeared on my calendar every morning for a week, not because I intended to celebrate it, because I wanted to remember the man who had almost made the same mistake twice. My assistant knocked lightly. Mr. Ashford. Yes. Someone requested a private meeting. Who? She hesitated. Your grandmother. For a long moment, I simply looked out the window. In another life, hearing those words would have filled me with hope. Now, they filled me with calm. Please show her in. Grandmother Eleanor entered more slowly than I remembered. She no longer wore the commanding expression that once silenced entire boardrooms. Instead, she carried a small wooden case with both hands. She placed it gently on my desk. I've come to return something. I opened it. Inside lay grandfather's old signet ring, the symbol of the Ashford family, the ring every heir dreamed of wearing. I thought Victor had it. He gave it back. She smiled sadly. He said it belonged to someone who understood what our family had forgotten. I looked at the ring, then quietly closed the case. It belongs in the family archive. She seemed surprised. You don't want it? I don't need a ring to remember who grandfather was. Silence settled between us. After a while, she whispered, I spent years believing leadership meant choosing one grandchild. Her eyes reddened. I never realized I was teaching both of you to lose. I poured tea, the same way I had during our last meeting. Only this time, neither of us carried anger. I blamed you for many years. I know. I don't anymore. She lowered her head. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Perhaps. I looked at the steam rising from our cups. But forgiveness isn't something people deserve. She looked up. It's something we choose. For the first time in decades. She smiled without pride. Only relief. A week later, I received another unexpected invitation. This one came from Victor. No lawyers. No board members. No business. Just dinner. We met at a small noodle shop near the river. The owner clearly recognized neither of us. That anonymity felt refreshing. Victor looked healthier. The lines around his eyes had softened. He no longer wore expensive watches. His suit was ordinary. So, he stirred his tea awkwardly. I work for a logistics company now. How is it? My manager makes me rewrite reports. I couldn't help smiling. That sounds familiar. He laughed. It does. For a while, we simply ate. No accusations. No old arguments. Eventually, he spoke again. I've been thinking about something. What? The inheritance. I waited. You know? He looked toward the river outside. I spent my whole life trying to take it from you. And I never asked whether I actually wanted it. The honesty in those words carried more weight than any apology. You were chasing approval. He nodded. So were you. He wasn't wrong. The difference was only that we chased approval from different directions. I'm sorry. His voice was quiet. I know. No. He shook his head. I don't mean for the company. He looked directly at me. I mean for making you believe you had to carry everything alone. The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. I accepted that burden myself. You shouldn't have. Neither of us spoke after that. Some apologies didn't need replies. They only needed witnesses. When we left the restaurant, we shook hands. Not because everything had been forgotten. Because some relationships could become honest without ever becoming close again. That was enough. Early summer painted the city in warm light. The Ashford Foundation celebrated its 50th anniversary with a simple ceremony. No extravagant stage. No celebrity hosts. Only students, teachers, factory workers, researchers, and families whose lives had quietly changed because someone had chosen responsibility over pride. Daniel stood beside me backstage. Nervous. I've spoken in front of larger audiences. That's not what I asked. I smiled. No. The master of ceremonies called my name. Applause echoed through the hall. I walked onto the stage carrying no prepared speech. Only a single sheet of paper. I looked across hundreds of faces, then folded the paper in half. I don't need this. Soft laughter spread through the audience. When people talk about inheritance, I began slowly. They usually mean money. I paused. I used to believe that too. The room fell completely silent. I thought the greatest gift my grandfather could leave me was a company. I shook my head gently. I was wrong. The greatest inheritance anyone can receive. I looked toward the scholarship students sitting in the front row. It's the chance to become someone whose worth doesn't depend on what they own. Applause began quietly, then grew louder. I spotted grandmother in the audience. She wasn't seated in the front. She had chosen an ordinary chair among everyone else. Beside her sat Victor. Not as heirs, not as rivals, simply as family trying to become better than yesterday. Daniel smiled. Emily wiped away a tear. Mr. Holden applauded until his hands turned red. As the ceremony ended, a young scholarship recipient approached me. He couldn't have been older than 18. Mr. Ashford? Yes. My father worked at Ashford Group. I waited. He lost his job during the investigation. My chest tightened. But the young man smiled. The foundation paid for my engineering degree. He held out his graduation photograph. I wanted you to see this. I accepted the picture carefully. His father stood proudly beside him. Neither wore expensive clothes. Neither needed to. Thank you. He bowed before disappearing into the crowd. I stood there for a long time, looking at the photograph. A year ago, I had believed refusing the inheritance meant walking away from my family's legacy. Instead, it had allowed me to finally understand it. Grandfather hadn't built a company so one man could own it. He built it so thousands of families could build better lives. Companies rise. Companies fall. Fortunes appear. Fortunes vanish. Titles are given. Titles are taken away. But integrity remains long after every balance sheet is forgotten. As evening settled over the city, I walked alone along the riverside where Daniel and I had first met after my second chance. The water reflected the setting sun in countless shades of gold. I thought about the man who had died alone in his office. The man who believed sacrifice guaranteed love. The man who carried everyone else's burdens until there was nothing left of himself. I thanked him quietly. Without his mistakes, I would never have recognized my second chance. Without letting the inheritance go, I would never have found the life that had always been waiting beyond it. No one knew what I already knew when I signed those papers. Now, they didn't need to, because the truth had never belonged to me alone. It simply needed someone willing to stop holding it back.